glad you're here with us today as we dive into Alma 50. It's a pretty amazing chapter.
Yeah, it really is. It gives us this fascinating look at what happens when people are really united in following God's commandments.
Okay, so right off the bat, in Alma 50, verses 17 and 18, we see the Nephites are in a really good place. And in these prosperous circumstances were the people of Nephi in the commencement of the 21st year of the reign of the judges over the people of Nephi. And they did prosper exceedingly, and they became exceedingly rich.
It's like they're experiencing this incredible time of both material and spiritual prosperity.
Yeah, you really get a sense of just how blessed they are. But it makes you wonder, what do you think was the biggest contributor to this prosperity? Was it just good luck, or was there something more to it?
Well, Alma actually addresses that directly. He quotes his father Lehi's words back in chapter 2, verse 20.
Inasmuch as ye shall keep my commandments, ye shall prosper in the land.
Exactly. That principle of obedience leading to blessings, it's a constant theme throughout the Book of Mormon. And here we see it playing out in the lives of the Nephites.
So their obedience is key. But it's not like they're just sitting around waiting for blessings to fall from the sky. They're actively working to build up their society, fortifying it. The scriptures talk about Moroni, this incredible military leader, going to great lengths to establish these strongholds and defenses all across the land.
Oh, absolutely, Moroni. He's not just a warrior, he's a strategic mastermind. We see that right from the beginning of the chapter in Alma 50, verses 1-7.
And he was a man who was firm in the faith of Christ, and he had sworn with an oath to defend his people, his rights, and his church and his God, even to the loss of his blood.
Yeah, his dedication to protecting the Nephites, it just shines through.
You know what really stands out to me, though, is how forward-thinking he is.
Yeah.
Like in verse 6, it talks about him causing towers to be erected that overlook those works round about the city. It sounds like he's anticipating potential threats and preparing for them in advance.
He's definitely not just reacting. He's thinking ahead, strategically placing his defenses.
So he's creating this safe space for the Nephites to flourish.
Not just physically, but spiritually and culturally as well. And we really see that reflected in their geographical expansion.
Right. In Alma 50.3, it describes how they did multiply exceedingly and spread upon the face of the land and became exceeding rich in gold and in silver and in precious things and in fine workmanship of wood, in buildings and in machinery, and also in iron and copper and brass and steel, making all manner of tools of every kind to till the ground and weapons of war, yea, the sharp-pointed arrow and the quiver and the dart and the javelin and all preparations for war.
It's amazing. They're building new cities, expanding their territory. They're developing incredible skills and craftsmanship.
Their outward prosperity is a direct result of their inward faithfulness. They're living in harmony with God's principles, and they're reaping the blessings.
But as we know, life isn't always smooth sailing. Even in these times of peace and abundance, there are always challenges.
And that's what makes this chapter so interesting. It's not just a celebration of their success. It's also a cautionary tale. Like in verse 21, it reminds us that their quarrelings and their contentions, yea, their murderings and their plunderings, their idolatry, their whoredoms and their abominations, which were among themselves, which brought upon them their wars and their destructions.
Yeah, despite all their blessings, they weren't immune to the consequences of straying from God's commandments.
It's like a reminder that complacency can be a dangerous thing.
Absolutely. Even when things are good, we can't afford to become lax in our commitment to righteousness.
So it's like, even with all these impressive fortifications, the real battle was being waged within their hearts.
They had to constantly choose faith over fear, obedience over selfishness.
And that's where things get really interesting, because the story of Morianton and his ambition, it really puts that internal struggle on full display.
Morianton's story, in Alma 50, starting in verse 25, it really highlights those dangers of unchecked ambition.
Yeah, it's like this huge contrast to all that unity and prosperity we see with the Nephites overall.
Right. Like, here's this guy, Morianton, who gets all caught up in this land dispute and decides he's going to take matters into his own hands.
Alma 50.27 says that Morianton, being a man of a stiff neck and a high mind, therefore he went forth among the people, boasting of his exceeding strength and also of his riches. Therefore he stirred up much contention among the people, and he took upon himself to be a king over that part of the land which was northward. So his pride and lust for power just totally lead him down the wrong path.
And his actions totally go against all those righteous principles that brought the Nephites so much success. Instead of trying to make peace and work together, he just causes all this discord and division.
And then in Alma 50.31, it talks about how he treated his servant, and it came to pass that he did cause his servant to be stripped, and he bound him and gave him blows and went forth in great speed.
His heart was so hardened by selfishness.
It's just crazy to me how quickly things can shift. Like they'd experienced the bad consequences of pride and contention before. Yet here they are facing those same threats again, but this time it's coming from inside their own society. It makes you think, is it just human nature to keep repeating these same mistakes over and over?
It's definitely a timeless struggle, that pull towards self-interest versus, the desire to be unified and sacrifice for the greater good.
But thankfully, in this case, we see some righteous leadership step up and set things right.
Exactly.
Tiancum, right? Moroni's trusted captain. He gets sent to put down the rebellion.
Yeah, Tiancum, he really embodies what it means to be a true leader.
Yeah.
He understands that protecting the people, it takes more than just physical strength.
It takes courage, too.
Yeah, moral courage, that willingness to confront injustice.
And we see that in Alma 50.33325, where it describes him going after Morianton and restoring order. Therefore Tiancum followed him, and did overtake him, and did slay him. But as he was going forth, he met Morianton, who had a company of men, and there they did fight, and slew all the company of Morianton, and took Morianton prisoner, and returned to the camp of Moroni. And thus ended the 28th year of the reign of the judges.
He took decisive action. He didn't hesitate. He knew what needed to be done.
I loved it. He's like a living example of those principles Moroni laid out in his oath back in verses 1 and 2. Yea, verily, verily, I say unto you, if all men had been and were and ever would be like unto Moroni, behold, the very powers of hell would have been shaken forever. Yea, the devil would never have power over the hearts of the children of men.
They're not just fighting for territory or power. They're fighting to preserve the very soul of their society.
And then we come to another really important moment in this chapter, the passing of the torch from Nephiah to his son Pahoran.
Yeah, that transition of leadership is really significant.
So in Alma 50.3740, we learn that Nephiah, the chief judge, he passes away, and his son Pahoran is appointed to take his place. It seems like a pretty smooth transition. But I'm curious, why is this event given so much attention in the narrative?
Well, I think it highlights just how crucial righteous leadership is and how important a peaceful transfer of power is.
Yeah.
Especially in a society that's prone to division and contention,
Yeah, makes sense.
That orderly succession of leadership,
Yeah.
it helps to maintain stability and ensures that righteous principles continue to guide the people.
And it seems like Pahoran really embraces those principles. Verse 39 describes his oath of office, to judge righteously, and to keep the peace and the freedom of the people, and to grant unto them their rights and the privileges of their religion, that they may worship God according to their desires.
It's powerful. It really emphasizes the role of government in protecting individual liberty and religious freedom.
It's so cool how this chapter brings together all these different themes. Prosperity, obedience, leadership, the constant threat of challenges, both internal and external.
It's like this tapestry of life. It shows us all the complexities and contradictions.
Yeah, and it really makes you think about your own life and the choices you make.
Absolutely. Like, what are we building both individually and as a community? Are we creating those fortifications of righteousness, or are we giving in to pride and self-interest?
Such good questions to ponder. Because just like the Nephites, we're all engaged in this battle for our hearts and minds, this battle for the soul of our society.
And the choices we make today, those choices will determine the legacy we leave behind. This chapter, it's like it's holding a mirror up to us, forcing us to really examine our own lives and how we're impacting the world.
It's true. Even with all the military stuff and political maneuvering going on, the real heart of the story, it's about the spiritual state of the people.
Their faithfulness, their obedience to God. It's the foundation upon which everything else is built.
When they're in line with God's will, they prosper. When they stray off course, that's when things fall apart.
It's a pattern we see over and over throughout history, and in our own lives, too. When we put our relationship with God first, when we strive to live by His principles, that's how we create lasting peace and happiness.
It's not always easy, though. Life throws us a lot of curveballs.
Yeah.
There are temptations, setbacks, doubts. It's like we're constantly being tested.
But that's where faith comes in, that unwavering trust in God's plan, even when we don't understand it.
We see that faith in Moroni, Tiancum, Pahoran. They're not perfect, but they're trying to do what's right, even when it's hard.
And their faith, it inspires others. It helps those around them to overcome their fears and build a society where righteousness can thrive.
So it's not enough to just read about the Nephites and admire what they did. We need to apply their example to our own lives.
Exactly. We need to ask ourselves, what are we building in our lives? What battles are we facing? What kind of leaders are we?
Because in the end, the strength of any society comes down to the character of its people.
And that character is shaped by our faith, our values, our willingness to stand up for what we believe in.
As we wrap up our look at Alma 50, I want to leave you with this thought. The story of the Nephites. It's not just ancient history. It's a guidebook for building a life of meaning and purpose.
We're not just watching this unfold, you know? We're active participants. We have the power to choose our path and create our own destiny.
That's a big responsibility. But we can do it. We have a legacy to build a world to change, a God to serve. Let's all go forward with that same determination to live righteously, courageously, and with unwavering faith, like we've seen in this chapter.
And we hope you'll join us again for more discussions like this. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out.